The magnificent crystalline dome of the High Council chamber sparkled under the light of 3 setting suns. Supreme Counselor Vexthor drummed his scaled fingers against the ancient marble table, his 4 eyes narrowing at the latest trade dispute reports from the Outer Rim. Around him, 200 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy continued their daily deliberations, their voices echoing off the towering pillars that stretched into the twilight sky above. A young acolyte burst through the grand doors, her tentacles writhing in obvious distress. "Honored ones, please forgive the interruption," she gasped, her chromatophores flashing urgent patterns. "We've received a transmission. It's broadcasting simultaneously across all Imperial frequencies." Before anyone could respond, every screen in the chamber flickered to life. The trade reports vanished, replaced by a single figure. A human, wearing what appeared to be a perfectly pressed blue uniform. The being's appearance was striking in its simplicity. 2 eyes, pale skin, dark hair neatly trimmed. Nothing like the elaborate decorative features the council members had evolved over millennia of genetic enhancement. The human's voice filled the chamber, calm and measured. "Greetings, High Council of the Galactic Empire. I represent the United Earth government." A quiet murmur rippled through the assembly at these words. Earth, that primitive world they had quarantined centuries ago, deemed too volatile for integration into galactic society. "We have watched your empire expand across the stars," the human continued, maintaining an unsettling eye contact that seemed to meet every council member's gaze simultaneously. "We have observed your methods, your laws, and your treatment of emerging civilizations. The time has come for change." Supreme Counselor Vexthor rose from his seat, his scales shifting to a deep purple of authority. "This is outrageous. Your species was contained within your solar system. You lack the technology to even reach neighboring stars, let alone broadcast across Imperial space." A small smile crossed the human's face. "Your assessment of our capabilities is incorrect, Counselor. It always has been. You have 48 standard hours to formally relinquish control of your territories. This is not a negotiation. It is a courtesy notice." The chamber erupted in laughter. Grand Admiral Zixtal, her crystalline form shimmering with amusement, spoke next. "You dare threaten the Empire? We command the largest fleet ever assembled. Our smallest battle group could reduce your entire system to atomic particles." "We are not threatening you," the human replied, that same eerily calm smile never wavering. "We are informing you of what will happen. Your weapons are impressive, Admiral, but they rely on principles of physics that we transcended centuries ago. 48 hours. When the time expires, we will demonstrate the true extent of human advancement." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. First Speaker Miralith, her gossamer wings casting rainbow patterns across the floor, floated to the center of the chamber. "My fellow council members, let us not allow this crude attempt at intimidation to disrupt our proceedings. Clearly, some human faction has managed to hijack our communication networks. Security will track down the source, and appropriate measures will be taken." But as the council tried to return to their normal duties, an unsettling thought nagged at their minds. The humans' eyes had held something they rarely saw in lesser species. Not fear, not anger, not even ambition. They had shown absolute certainty, the kind that comes not from belief, but from knowledge. In the observatory tower high above the council chamber, a young scientist studied her instruments with growing concern. The quantum fluctuation readings were off the scale, and if her calculations were correct, space itself was beginning to fold in ways that defied Imperial physics. She reached for the communication panel to alert her superiors, then hesitated. They wouldn't believe her anyway. Instead, she began backing up her data, watching as reality itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something momentous to begin. Dr. Lixera hunched over her quantum monitoring station in the Imperial Science Academy, her crystalline fingers trembling as she reviewed the data for the 100th time. The readings didn't make sense. Stars weren't supposed to shift positions, even momentarily. Space itself shouldn't ripple like water disturbed by unseen stones. Director Vostin needs to see this, she whispered to herself, gathering her courage. The last 3 researchers who had reported anomalies had been quietly reassigned to distant outposts. Still, she couldn't ignore what she was seeing. The director's office was a monument to imperial scientific achievement, its walls lined with holograms of conquered worlds and tamed astronomical phenomena. The aged Vostin, his exoskeleton dulled with years of academic pursuit, barely glanced at her data crystals. "Sensor malfunction," he declared, his antennae twitching dismissively. "The Empire's instruments are perfect. If there were actual spatial distortions of this magnitude, every ship in the sector would be reporting navigational errors." As if on cue, his communication terminal chimed. "Director," a harried voice reported, "we've lost contact with the Nexus 7 trading fleet. Their last transmission mentioned something about the stars being in the wrong places." More reports flooded in over the next few hours. A research station in the Cygnus arm recorded time flowing backward for exactly 3.7 seconds. The quantum entanglement network connecting the core worlds experienced synchronized hiccups, transmitting data that appeared to arrive before it was sent. In the imperial capital's Grand Plaza, thousands gathered to watch in awe as the magnetic poles shifted repeatedly, sending shimmering auroras dancing across the sky in impossible patterns. The Empire's most sophisticated weather control systems failed as atmospheric particles began behaving according to laws of physics that didn't exist in any textbook. Grand Admiral Zixtal stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching as her fleet's sensors painted an increasingly bizarre picture of reality. "Show me the anomaly pattern," she commanded, her crystalline form refracting the holographic display into rainbow fragments. The tactical officer complied, bringing up a 3-dimensional map of known space. Red dots marked the location of each reported disturbance. As they watched, the dots began connecting themselves, forming a complex geometric pattern that seemed to fold through dimensions the Empire's greatest mathematicians had only theorized about. "It's a message," the tactical officer breathed, his scales shifting to the deep blue of revelation. "Or a signature. These disturbances, they're deliberate." In a secret facility beneath the Imperial Palace, the Empire's most advanced artificial intelligence system began experiencing something its creators had thought impossible: confusion. The quantum processors that allowed it to simulate possible futures were returning results that contradicted fundamental constants of the universe. The High Council convened an emergency session as reports continued to pour in. First Speaker Miralet's wings had lost their usual luster as she addressed the assembly. "Our experts assure us these phenomena are localized and temporary. There is no cause for—" She was interrupted by a junior scientist who had slipped into the chamber, clutching a data pad with trembling appendages. "Honored ones, forgive my intrusion, but the anomalies, they're forming a pattern. A countdown." The council chamber erupted in chaos as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just made threats. They were already demonstrating power over the fundamental forces of reality itself. Every strange occurrence, every violation of known physics, was simply them flexing their muscles, showing what they could do without firing a single shot. In her observatory, Dr. Lixera watched as a small star in a distant system winked out of existence for precisely 1 second before reappearing. Her instruments indicated it hadn't been destroyed or obscured. It had simply been elsewhere. As she stared at her readings, a terrifying thought occurred to her. What if the Empire's understanding of physics wasn't just incomplete, but fundamentally wrong? And what did that say about the beings who had mastered the true nature of reality? The 48-hour deadline approached its final minutes. Grand Admiral Zixtal had assembled the largest defensive fleet in Imperial history. 50,000 warships arranged in a perfect geometric formation around the capital system. Each vessel bristled with enough firepower to reduce a continent to ash. The Admiral's crystalline form pulsed with confident colors as she surveyed the tactical display. "Let them come," she whispered to her bridge crew. Let these humans see what true power looks like." As if in response to her challenge, space itself began to crack. There was no other way to describe it. Reality split open like a curtain being torn, revealing something that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Through these tears in the universe they came. The human ships defied description. Their hulls seemed to be made of liquid starlight, flowing and shifting in patterns that suggested geometries from higher dimensions. They moved with impossible grace, leaving trails of quantum distortions in their wake. The smallest of them dwarfed the Empire's largest dreadnoughts. "Open fire," Zixtal commanded, her voice sharp with barely contained fear. 50,000 ships unleashed their full arsenal simultaneously. Planet-cracking energy beams, antimatter torpedoes, and exotic particle weapons lit up space with enough force to atomize a small moon. Every single shot passed harmlessly through the human vessels. "Fascinating weapons," a calm voice transmitted across all frequencies. "Your mastery of three-dimensional warfare is quite impressive." Unfortunately, we stopped thinking in such limited terms centuries ago. The human ships began to move. They flowed through space like water through air, passing through solid matter, as if it wasn't there. A massive human vessel simply phased through one of the Empire's proudest dreadnoughts, leaving the Imperial crew staring in horror as the ghostly form of an impossible ship occupied the same space as their own. In orbit around every major Imperial world, more tiers in reality appeared. The human Armada emerged simultaneously across 12,000 systems, their ships moving with perfect coordination. Some seemed to exist in multiple places at once, while others appeared to age thousands of years and crumble to dust, only to reverse back to pristine condition moments later. On the Imperial capital, the High Council watched in stunned silence as a human vessel larger than a small moon materialized directly above their citadel. It hung there, impossibly graceful, its surface rippling with patterns that seemed to be mathematical equations written in light. The Empire's weapons are based on manipulating matter and energy. The human transmission continued. Impressive, but limited. We learned to manipulate the fabric of space-time itself. Your shots pass through our ships because we can choose which moments of time we exist in. Your sensors cannot track us because we operate on 11-dimensional planes simultaneously. Grand Admiral Zixtal watched helplessly as her perfect formation broke apart, ships scattering in panic as human vessels danced between them like shadows between stars. Each human ship moved with purpose, yet none had fired a single shot. They didn't need to. Their mere presence demonstrated a level of technological superiority that made resistance meaningless. In the Imperial Science Academy, Dr. Lixera's instruments were registering power readings that broke every scale. The human ships weren't just traveling through space. They were actively rewriting the laws of physics in their immediate vicinity. Each vessel carried enough energy to rival a small galaxy, yet somehow contained it within fields that her most advanced sensors couldn't even begin to comprehend. Your chronometer will show that exactly 48 hours have passed, the human voice announced to the galaxy. We have demonstrated a fraction of our capabilities. The choice of what happens next rests with the High Council. We await your response. In the council chamber, First Speaker Miraleth's wings drooped as she turned to her fellow leaders. For the first time in Imperial history, the choice wasn't between victory or defeat, but between survival or annihilation. The humans had just rewritten the rules of warfare itself, and the Empire hadn't even begun to understand the game. The Imperial High Council chamber fell silent as a holographic projection materialized in its center. A human diplomatic team stood before them. Their simple blue uniforms a stark contrast to the ornate regalia of the council members. The lead diplomat, a woman with silver-streaked hair, stepped forward with quiet confidence. "You believe you isolated us 3 centuries ago," she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. "In reality, we accepted that isolation willingly. It served our purposes." The projection shifted, showing the Sol system as it appeared 300 years ago. While your observers watched our apparent struggles with basic spaceflight, We were already conducting experiments that your scientists would consider impossible. Supreme Counselor Vexthor's scales rippled with skepticism. Impossible. Our monitoring stations would have detected any significant technological advancement. A slight smile crossed the diplomat's face. They detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. You see, we didn't build our technology in normal space. The hologram expanded, revealing layers of reality beneath what the Empire could perceive. We transformed our entire solar system into a temporal research facility, existing simultaneously across multiple dimensions. The projection showed Earth, but somehow wrong, existing in several states at once, like a quantum particle refusing to collapse into a single possibility. What appeared to be 3 centuries to you was subjectively thousands of years for us. We learned to step sideways through time, to exist in multiple moments simultaneously. Dr. Lixera, hastily summoned from her observatory, stared at the data streaming across her pad. The mathematics. It's beautiful, she whispered. They're not breaking the laws of physics. They're operating on a level where our understanding of physics is as primitive as steam engines. The human diplomat nodded appreciatively at the scientist's insight. We discovered that reality is far more flexible than anyone imagined. Time, space, dimension. These are not barriers but suggestions. While your empire expanded outward, we expanded inward, exploring the infinite spaces between moments. The hologram showed human ships under construction, but the process was unlike anything the Empire had seen. The vessels grew like crystals in solution, each one a perfect manifestation of mathematical principles that made the Empire's best theorists feel like children counting on their fingers. Your quarantine beacons, the diplomat continued. We reprogrammed them centuries ago to show you exactly what you expected to see. Your deep space probes. They passed through regions we had shifted slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. Even your most sophisticated sensors could only detect what existed within the limited band of reality you could perceive. First Speaker Miraleth's wings trembled as the implications became clear. You've been watching us. All this time. Studying us. Yes, the diplomat confirmed. We observed your empire's expansion. We saw how you treated developing civilizations. We watched you suppress innovation, enforce technological stagnation, and maintain power through carefully controlled advancement. The hologram shifted again, showing countless worlds under imperial control. On each one, subtle manipulations of reality became visible. Human observers walking unseen through imperial facilities, ships passing like ghosts through security networks, sensors that existed between the ticks of a clock. We could have revealed ourselves at any time. Another human diplomat added, his dark skin contrasting with silver implants that pulsed with impossible energy. But we needed to understand, to see if the Empire could change on its own, to give you every chance to choose a different path. The chamber erupted in a chaos of voices as council members demanded explanations, offered justifications, or simply tried to comprehend the scale of what they were hearing. Through it all, the human diplomats stood patiently, their calm presence a reminder of power so vast it didn't need to be demonstrated through force. In her observatory, Dr. Lixera finally understood what she was seeing in her instruments. The humans hadn't just mastered science, they had transcended it. And now, the Empire faced a choice: adapt to a universe far stranger and more wonderful than they had imagined, or cling to their limited understanding and face the consequences. Grand Admiral Zixtal stood rigid on her flagship's bridge, her crystalline form radiating determination. The Imperial High Command had refused the humans' terms, and now the pride of the Imperial fleet. 10,000 warships gleaming with advanced weaponry, assembled for what would surely be the most significant battle in galactic history. All ships, battle formation Delta, she commanded, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the command network. The massive fleet arranged itself into a complex three-dimensional pattern, a formation that had won 1,000 battles across the stars. The human vessels waited, their liquid light hulls rippling with mathematical patterns. They hadn't moved since appearing, hadn't raised shields, hadn't shown any sign of hostile intent. They simply existed, like laws of nature given form. "Open fire," Zixtal ordered. The void erupted with energy as 10,000 ships unleashed their full arsenal. Planet-cracking beams, quantum torpedoes, and exotic particle weapons converged on the human fleet. For a brief moment, the Admiral allowed herself to hope. Then reality began to dance. The human ships moved like notes in a cosmic symphony. Some simply shifted sideways through dimensions, letting the attacks pass harmlessly through space they no longer occupied. Others seemed to age thousands of years in seconds, becoming ancient and then young again. The Imperial weapons affecting neither state. One massive vessel split into hundreds of identical copies, each one as real as the original, before merging back into a single ship. Dr. Lixera, watching from her observatory, saw something the military commanders couldn't comprehend. The human ships weren't dodging the attacks. They were incorporating them into their movement. Each blast of energy, each torpedo, each beam became part of an elaborate pattern, a dance of light and force that transformed warfare into art. Fascinating approach. The human commander's voice echoed across all frequencies. But let us show you something new. Time began moving at different speeds across the battlefield. Some Imperial ships found themselves frozen between moments, their crews experiencing a single second stretched into hours. Others accelerated through time, their pilots watching weeks pass in minutes. A squadron of destroyers discovered they were fighting their own past selves, weapons fire crossing paths with shots they had fired minutes ago. "Impossible," Zixtal's tactical officer exclaimed as his instruments tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "They're operating in at least 9 dimensions simultaneously. Our targeting systems can't even perceive their true positions." A human vessel larger than a small moon approached the Eternal Dominion. Instead of attacking, it began to phase through the flagship, passing through solid matter as if it were mist. The Imperial crew stood transfixed as they found themselves temporarily sharing space with their counterparts on the human ship. Through walls that had become transparent, they saw humans working in harmony with technologies that seemed alive, interfaces that existed in multiple realities at once. "You see," the human commander explained gently, "we evolved beyond the concept of traditional combat centuries ago. Your weapons are impressive, but they operate on principles as limited as throwing stones. We've learned to treat space-time itself as our medium." To demonstrate, they caused a small star to relocate briefly into the heart of the battlefield, its gravitational influence precisely controlled to rearrange the Imperial fleet into an elegant spiral pattern. Not a single ship was damaged, but the message was clear. Resistance wasn't just futile, it was irrelevant. Admiral Zixtal, watching her mighty fleet moved about like pieces on a game board, finally understood. The humans hadn't come to fight a war. They had come to demonstrate that the very concept of warfare, as the Empire understood it, was obsolete. In the Imperial Palace, the High Council received the battle reports in stunned silence. Their greatest fleet, armed with the most powerful weapons in known space, hadn't even managed to inconvenience the human ships. The Empire's military might, the foundation of their power for millennia, had just been rendered as obsolete as stone spears against starships. The Imperial Palace's central chamber had never seemed so vast and empty as when the human diplomatic team stepped through its solid walls, their forms shimmering like heat waves over desert sand. The High Council members watched in stunned silence as the lead diplomat, her silver-streaked hair gleaming under the crystal dome, approached their ancient table. "We promised to show you truth," she said, raising her hand. Above the table, a hologram sprang to life, but unlike any the Empire had seen. This projection existed in multiple layers of reality simultaneously, allowing viewers to experience events from all perspectives at once. 3 centuries ago, on the world you designated Colony 327, the image showed a peaceful agricultural civilization discovering their first fusion reactor. Your observers noted their advancement. The scene shifted to an Imperial strike team systematically destroying research facilities, replacing them with more primitive technology. Supreme Counselor Vexthor's scales darkened with discomfort. We maintain order. Controlled advancement prevents chaos. Let's move forward 2 decades, the diplomat continued. The hologram flowed like water, showing 1,000 similar interventions across space and time. Every civilization that approached a breakthrough, every species that questioned the established order, all carefully guided back into acceptable parameters. Dr. Lixera, who had been granted special permission to attend, stepped forward. These records, they're not just observations. You were there, weren't you? Walking between moments, gathering evidence. The diplomat nodded approvingly. We stationed observers in quantum layers just slightly out of phase with standard reality. They documented everything while remaining completely undetectable to Imperial sensors. The hologram expanded, showing the true scope of human surveillance. Observers had walked unseen through Imperial facilities, their sensor records capturing every decision, every intervention, every carefully orchestrated suppression of advancement. First Speaker Miraleth's wings trembled as she watched scenes from her own past, moments where she had signed orders that seemed necessary at the time. You understand nothing, she protested. Without control, without guidance, these species would have grown. The diplomat suggested quietly. Evolved. Found their own paths to the stars. She gestured, and the hologram shifted again, showing alternate timelines. Possibilities that had been pruned away by Imperial intervention. Worlds where different species had achieved remarkable breakthroughs, each following unique paths of development. Your empire, another diplomat added, his dark skin contrasting with streams of data flowing across his neural interfaces, has maintained stability by enforcing stagnation. You claim to protect, but you really fear. Fear what might emerge if others were allowed to reach their full potential. The hologram's final sequence showed the 1,000 subtle ways humanity had tested the Empire over centuries, small opportunities for change, chances to choose a different path, all quietly observed and documented. We could have intervened at any time, the lead diplomat continued, but true change cannot be forced. We needed to understand if your empire could recognize its own failings, if there was hope for transformation from within. Grand Admiral Zixtal, still shaken from the recent demonstration of human power, spoke up from her position near the chamber's edge. And now, you'll force this transformation through superior firepower, just as we did. The diplomat's smile held genuine warmth. No, Admiral. We're offering you a choice, a real choice, perhaps the first your empire has faced in millennia. A chance to be part of something greater than control and suppression. Dr. Lixera watched in fascination as the hologram transformed one final time, showing a possible future, one where species developed along their own paths while sharing knowledge across dimensional barriers. You're not here to conquer us, she breathed. You're here to free us, to free everyone. Freedom, the diplomat agreed, includes the freedom to choose a different way forward. The question is, can your empire accept a galaxy where control gives way to cooperation, where power serves growth rather than suppression? The council chamber fell silent as the weight of that question settled over them like a physical force. The future of 1,000,000 worlds hung in the balance, waiting for an empire built on control to choose whether it could learn to let go. The High Council chamber had never felt more divided, as its members faced the most crucial decision in Imperial history. Supreme Counselor Vexthor's scales shifted through patterns of uncertainty as he studied the human diplomatic team standing before them, their presence both reassuring and terrifying in its quiet confidence. You offer us choice, he said, his 4 eyes focusing on the lead diplomat, but your power makes it no choice at all. Submit or face extinction. How is this different from the control you accuse us of wielding? The human diplomat stepped forward, her movement leaving subtle ripples in reality. Perhaps a demonstration of true choice is in order. She gestured, and the air above the council table transformed into a window through dimensions. Through this impossible viewport, they watched as a star system appeared, one that had never been touched by Imperial influence. Its twin suns danced around each other in perfect harmony, while 5 inhabited worlds circled in complex orbits. This system exists in what you would call the Andromeda Galaxy, she explained. We discovered it during our dimensional explorations. Watch what happens when we shift it slightly out of phase with normal spacetime. The entire star system flickered, like a reflection in disturbed water, then vanished. No explosion, no destruction. It simply ceased to exist in their observable universe. We haven't destroyed it, the diplomat continued as gasps echoed through the chamber. We've merely relocated it to a parallel dimension. Its inhabitants continue their lives, unaware anything has changed. We could do the same with the entire empire. Dr. Lixera's instruments were registering power fluctuations that made her previous readings look like background noise. The energy requirements for such a transition would be beyond your current ability to measure, another human diplomat completed her thought. But that's not the point. The point is choice. Real choice. The lead diplomat turned back to the council. Option 1. Work with us to transform the empire into something new. Yes, you would lose absolute control. Yes, other species would advance in ways you cannot predict or manage. But you would remain part of this universe, part of the great conversation of civilizations. She gestured again, and the dimensional window showed flashes of possible futures, worlds growing, species evolving, new ideas flowering across the galaxy. Option 2. Maintain your current path. If you choose this, we will simply shift your entire civilization into a parallel dimension where you can continue as you are, without the ability to suppress others' growth. No destruction, no death, just a separation that ensures the freedom of all parties. First speaker Miraleth's wings caught the light as she rose. And if we choose neither? If we decide to fight? The human's expression showed genuine sadness. Fighting implies the possibility of victory or defeat. What we offer isn't a battle to be won, but a truth to be accepted. The age of control through force is ending. The only question is whether you will be part of what comes next. Grand Admiral Zixtal, her crystalline form dulled by recent events, spoke up. I have commanded fleets that could shatter worlds. But today I saw power that makes our greatest weapons look like children's toys. Yet you stand here, asking instead of demanding. Why? Because true change cannot be forced, the diplomat replied. It must be chosen. We could compel your cooperation, rewrite your very nature across dimensional planes. But that would make us no better than the Empire at its worst. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some members argued for acceptance of the new reality, others for defiance, still others for attempting some form of compromise. Through it all, the human diplomats waited patiently, their presence a reminder that time itself was now a flexible concept. Dr. Lixera watched the dimensional window, seeing infinite possibilities branching out before them. In that moment, she understood. The humans hadn't come to end the empire, but to offer it evolution. The question was whether an empire built on absolute control could learn to embrace uncertainty. The 3 sons of the imperial capital rose on a changed universe. Supreme Counselor Vexthor stood at the grand observation deck, his scales reflecting the morning light as he watched the human vessels hanging in the sky like suspended stars. After 30 hours of intense deliberation, the High Council had reached their decision. We choose evolution, he announced to the assembled human diplomatic team, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000,000 worlds. But we require assurance that this transformation will not lead to chaos. The lead human diplomat smiled, generating a holographic display that filled the chamber with shimmering light. We anticipated this concern. Watch as we demonstrate the first phase of integrated development. Above a peaceful agricultural world that had long been held back by imperial restrictions, a human ship descended through the atmosphere. Instead of weapons or threats, it released streams of quantum-encoded data directly into the planet's information networks. Knowledge, carefully curated, the diplomat explained. Not all of our advances at once, but the foundations they need to find their own path forward. Each civilization will receive information tailored to their current level of development. Dr. Lixera, now appointed as chief liaison between Imperial and human scientists, watched in fascination as the quantum data streams took effect. The agricultural world scientists began making connections they had never seen before, their understanding expanding not through forced advancement, but through guided discovery. The key, another human diplomat added, is that we're not giving them technology directly. We're helping them understand the principles behind it. They'll develop their own unique applications, their own paths to the stars. First speaker Miralith, her wings now bearing intricate patterns of quantum-enhanced perception granted by human technology, addressed the council. Already, we're seeing changes across the Empire. The Cygnus Arm reports 3 civilizations making breakthrough discoveries in dimensional physics. The Orion Spur has 5 species developing their own forms of quantum communication. Grand Admiral Zixtal, her crystalline form now interfacing directly with both Imperial and human command networks, displayed tactical readouts showing the transformation spreading across space. Our role is changing, she observed. From controllers to guardians, from suppressors to guides. The human ships began repositioning themselves across Imperial space, but not as conquerors. They established dimensional observatories, quantum communication relays, and training centers where species could learn to harness their newfound knowledge safely. There will be challenges, the lead diplomat acknowledged. Some civilizations will advance faster than others. Some may choose paths you find uncomfortable. But that diversity, that unpredictability, it's not a flaw to be corrected, but a strength to be cultivated. Through the quantum networks, reports flowed in from across the galaxy. A species that had been restricted to steam power for centuries had already grasped the principles of zero-point energy. Another had developed a unique approach to dimensional folding based on their crystalline biology. Each discovery was different, each path unique. We won't simply hand over our most advanced technologies, the human diplomat continued. Some knowledge must be earned through natural development. But we will ensure that no species is artificially held back, that each civilization has the opportunity to reach its full potential. Dr. Lixera activated a dimensional viewer, showing the quantum probability streams of possible futures. Where once there had been a single controlled path enforced by imperial might, now thousands of bright futures branched out like a cosmic tree of possibility. This is not an ending, she realized aloud, but a beginning. Each species will develop differently, think differently, solve problems in ways we never imagined. The Empire isn't losing control, it's gaining perspectives it never knew existed. As the council chamber filled with reports of new discoveries and breakthroughs across the galaxy, Supreme Counselor Vexthor's scales shifted to a pattern never before seen in Imperial records. It took the human diplomat's multidimensional sensors to identify it. Hope, complex and beautiful, radiating across quantum frequencies previously unknown to Imperial science. The age of control was over. The age of possibility had begun.